I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And this is your home for everything Alberta independence. A lot of big news today. Thanks for everybody joining us on Saturday.
Yes.
Let's get into it, Nat.
First of all, thank you so much, as you said, for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe. It is what helps us out the most. Also, we try to read most, if not all, of your comments live. So please do join the conversation. It's always way more interesting when you do. And we do pause the whole show for super chats, whatever we're doing. We give priority to those, and those help us out a lot as well. And we have memberships. And don't forget to like the video, because again, it also does help.
Absolutely. And we have one person waving. Oh, Todd.
Yes. Hello, Silverfeet, and hello,
Silverfeet.
Todd. Hello to both of you. But other than that, I guess we can
My waves are catching on because I'm the other one that does the waves there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Other than that, should we start with breaking news?
Yeah, let's get into breaking news there.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
And let's start with this from the Western Standard saying, quote, D&D poll finds more Canadians see Trump as a top security threat than China or Russia.
Yeah, and we all know what this is because. This is because of Elbows Up and Mark Carney. But we got a lot of big news coming out of Canada, especially Liberals in Alberta. And I'll tell you, me and Nat kind of watched that yesterday. There's a podcast called The Line. And man, Liberals' minds are breaking right now. They're talking about going to the United States, which they absolutely hate Trump. But economically, they see no future in Canada. We're going to get into those clips. But Carney's put Canada in this situation, and he's really not just living in Trump's shadow, he's really living in JD Vance's shadow, because he has bet all of Canada's future, all Canadians' future on the fact that Trump is going to not be there after 2028. Yeah, he's not going to be there, but if JD Vance gets in there, who is, I would say, the front runner candidate right now, you're going to have a continuation of these same policies. They got together, they made a strategy for the Western Hemisphere to make a golden age. Canada is against this, and he needed to just cut a deal, and even a bad deal would have allowed Canada to maintain its sovereignty. Liberals now are talking about that Canada is going to be a vassal state, and I seem to agree with that. If they keep their elbows up and keep wanting to play hardball and not cut a deal, they're going to end up becoming a vassal state. This is one of the big reasons Alberta needs its independence. It doesn't have to become a vassal state. It can become an equal partner with the United States because its economy is so strong.
And that's an insane dichotomy of what we're seeing with at least Jen Gerson from The Line, which we'll get into in a little bit, but with other people as well noticing that there is something wrong in Canada, the Liberals, but not even wanting to touch or talk about Alberta's independence as a possible solution, and maybe even them being involved in that possible solution, but rather either moving to the US or moving elsewhere, somewhere in Latin America or anywhere else they can go, instead of now trying to fix Canada as they used to say that they wanted to do.
Well, absolutely. And something else I will kind of say there. I mean, these people have Trump derangement syndrome, but they're willing to economically put their feelings aside and move to the United States for the families. This is not just conservatives. These are crazy liberals as well that absolutely hate Trump, that are more than willing to move to the United States. We're going to go over that in their own words. Also, they're freaked out about Alberta independence. They keep putting on this strong front. It's starting to crack. And I think she is one of the leading, I would say, podcasters standing against Alberta independence. And that being said,
and she calls, Jen Gerson calls herself conservative, though. And that is, I think, a good representation of a lot of people that call themselves conservative, but are actually just liberal light.
Okay, let's keep going here. Let's read any comments, and then let's get into Stay Free Alberta. And at the end of the Stay Free Alberta section, that's where we're going to get into kind of what we were talking about there.
Todd says, yeah, let's get into breaking news. That was it. That was a breaking news. And also says, your only true source for news. Well, hopefully not. And we do encourage healthy, because, I mean, you do it. I do it mostly as well. But you look into a lot of different news sources and a lot of different opinions as well, which I think is important, even from those that we really don't agree with. But because you do have to know what their points are, where they stand, how would they change, because a lot of points from the lefties, the liberals, the Democrats even have completely changed over the past few months even, I would say. And it gets surprising once you actually start listening to them, because a lot of what they're concerned about now is what the conservatives have been screaming about for the past 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I'll say is, well, actually, you can keep with the comments, I guess.
Todd says, corrupted to its core, no fixing Canada. Exactly. And again, Alberta realized that almost as soon as it became a province. So
Well, the Liberals now are saying that Carney is not going hard enough, and if he's not going to defend themselves against the United States and go harder and put everything on the line against Donald Trump, that they're ready to leave Canada and move to the United States because they would rather be with the bully and secure their family's economic future. That's absolutely crazy coming from the Liberals, and she's not the only one that was saying that. I've watched a few Liberal shows over the last 2 days, and they're all coming to the same conclusion. Carney's Canada is starting to crumble. Another thing, I see a lot of podcasters, really good podcasters on the Alberta independent side talking about we're winning, we just need to keep going. What I'm going to show you today at the end of the Alberta Stay Free section is proof that the Liberal mind is absolutely breaking. They're conceding that Alberta independence is winning, and this is a rare thing.
Because again, what the propagandist mainstream media and Mark Carney himself during his campaign, after he was selected anyways, did was they got them so scared and so much further against the US and Trump, and so more wrapped into their Trump derangement syndrome, that yes, they want now something to be done about the US and Trump. And Carney, I mean, he's a banker. He's not stupid, though. That's the thing. A lot of people call him stupid. He's not stupid. He's Machiavellian, I would say. Now he can't actually fix it, because if he were actually to fully break off from the US and fully do what he promised he was going to do, well, then that would put Canada in even more of a dire state and wouldn't allow him to continue with his communist plans either at this point.
He's put himself in an all or nothing situation here. Either the Democrats win in 2028, and that doesn't guarantee that he's going to get the same deal as he had before. But yeah, I would concede most likely he would. But I would say there is not a good Democratic hopeful candidate for 2028. And J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio are really milquetoast candidates. A lot of people don't remember, J.D. Vance was a never-Trumper. Marco Rubio was also a never-Trumper. They ended up getting on board. Marco Rubio appeals to traditional conservatives. J.D. Vance is more of the populist wing and Silicon Valley. How are they going to say never Trump, orange man bad against these two, especially when they don't have the same kind of rhetoric and they don't say things in the exact same way, but they're going to have that same hardline policy when it comes to tariffs and negotiations with Canada.
True. And over on RUMBLE, Cape for you just says Alberta Independence, bring it on. Good day, y'all. And Christu says, hello, dears, Alberta Independence, let's effing go. And hold on, because we did get a message from Kusher, who says there's one thing about the Fauci issues that should be blaring in front of everybody. Space, the World Health Organization argued that they should have all the rights named to them or handed to them during a similar situation, I would say. And Kush also says after seeing Fauci testifying, he was ahead of the World Health Organization. That should scare people.
Okay, maybe we need to correct this a little bit, because the World Health Organization is almost going bankrupt. They're able to maintain right now, but barely. And they're not just asking. They have already got concessions from massive amounts of countries from around the world giving up their health sovereignty in another emergency situation like the jibby jab era. And the way they were able to get that consent is if you didn't vote against it or make a statement against it, you were automatically signed up to give away your sovereignty, or at least your health sovereignty, away, which is ridiculous. The United States was one of the few countries that stood up against it.
It's funny because when they started to announce that very quietly, and they didn't want really anybody to really look into it, I made a video that you can still find on this channel. That was 5 years ago, I would even say.
Yeah, both Mexico and the United States.
We've been screaming about this since then.
Both Mexico and the United States signed away their medical sovereignty in an emergency situation. Absolutely ridiculous. And the reason they're signing away their sovereignty is because the politicians don't want to have to make decisions and have shit land on their head. They would rather have somebody else do it. These are not the kind of leaders we want running our country, period.
Before we get into Alberta Stay Free, let me read 2 more comments. Hello, Yvette DeVoe says, I don't trust anything I hear, see, and taste anymore. Which is crazy as well, but very true. So many lies, and what Nat calls them retarded people. JS is just saying, I guess. Yeah. And Holden, that's how I'm going to call you, says, a couple minutes late, looking forward to another great show. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, and thank you everybody as well. Now let's get into Alberta Stay Free.
Sweet home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
And speaking of, and literally goes right into what we're going to be talking about, have been talking about, Biden Bliss says, quote, I'm Canadian and I will never step foot in the USA while this administration is in office. Retweet and proudly raise your hand if you're not traveling to America anytime soon. Believe me, they won't miss you or your really, really falling Canadian dollar.
The liberals with any sense right now are actually starting to wake up and realize they're not in a good position. Canada's not in a good position, and they may sacrifice the future of themselves and their families. But it's retards like this, and this is all over the internet. They just keeping their elbows up. And these liberals won't vote against Mark Carney, but they will move to the United States even if they hate Donald Trump, because they realize Donald Trump is putting the United States in a good situation, even though they continuously disagree with every single one of his policies. One thing they can agree with, America is in a much better position than Canada because of the choices he made.
And unfortunately, there will be still those foot soldiers of communism and the ones that get wrapped up into it and then get used to continue to further the insane policies that the federal government the insane policies that federal governments start implementing. And then they are the first ones that end up dying in a breadline. But there's a few that, yes, they might really like the liberal insanity of Mark Carney and think that it's a great idea. But at the end of the day, either have enough sense or money, or I wouldn't call it education, but sense, I will call it common sense, to say, well, my family won't survive here, so we're going to leave.
I would call it education, and that's the thing. They do have, especially liberals, at least have formal education in these indoctrination institutes, and they have that degree, which allows for easy immigration into the United States. Sure. That's why they're seeing the writing on the wall finally, because up to this point, what I said, and I stick to that, up to this point, is it's been conservatives fleeing the country for greener pastures in the United States, Mexico, and other places. But liberals are starting to wake up. And if that happens, we may really see Mark Carney's poll numbers start to go down there. Because what he's banking on is he can push conservatives out and replace them with new migrant voters that he can indoctrinate, because English is their second language, and he can use the mainstream media to his full advantage. They want to be good Canadians. Yeah. Being a good Canadian in Canada means voting liberal, at least to a new immigrant.
True. But let's see what Wealth Moose says. If you became prime minister tomorrow, what are 3 things that you would do? And answer that in the comments. That would be interesting. Says, quote, fix the relations with the U.S., stronger ties, more trade, more jobs. Kind of like how it used to be, but maybe even better. Put Canadians...
We want direct negotiations with our allies that are ideologically and financially kind of connected to us, like the United States.
And again, I bring this up, I sound like a broken record, but not just the United States, but now that most of the countries in Latin America, thanks to the end of USAID, have also adopted common sense and gone more toward, now mostly lean more towards the right, and have candidates that are interested in investment in the future of their citizens, of their countries, of fixing their economies that the lefty communists broke, like what's happening in Canada. You also get all of that. You also get the shield of the Americas if you are in good relations with the US.
Yeah.
Because it's essentially you get along with them, then you get along with everybody else too. Next, let's talk about Eeyore. Rebel News says, quote, the EB government is quietly negotiating another Aboriginal land title agreement, potentially covering 11% of British Columbia. I spoke with Conservative MLA and Indigenous Relations critic Steve McInnes about the lack of transparency because, of course, and a pattern of concerning NDP land agreements. It's the plan.
This is an extremely important article. We're going to wait a minute before we play it so we can explain what's actually going on here. A lot of people know about the land grabs happening from the UN through the DRIPA laws and the First Nations within British Columbia, and David Eby kind of letting all of that happen and facilitating it. But there's something else going on. And I said this was the much bigger land grab. This could be the biggest land grab in modern history. It's called the 30 by 30 program. A lot of people have heard about it, but they didn't know what was really going on. This is the first big giveaway from a province. 11%. Can you go up? Stop zooming in for a moment.
11%.
11% of the land within British Columbia. And this is what some of the most natural resource dense land within British Columbia for mining and other things. David Eby is going to sign this over away to the federal government. I'm sure he's going to get things behind the scenes, and they're negotiating why he's giving up 11%. I don't know, to, I guess, get in line with the other Western provinces. It's not going to surprise me if Danielle Smith starts giving away parts of Alberta very soon.
Now can I play it?
Yeah.
Once again, I was shocked but not surprised to learn that yet another Aboriginal title claim is up for grabs in British Columbia. This time, it appears our socialist NDP Premier David Eby, with the blessing of Prime Minister Mark Carney, of course, is about to hand over up to 11% of the entire province, and in one of our most mineral-rich regions.
The Supreme Court of Canada has been very clear that consent is not mandatory. A duty to consult is, and those are two very different frameworks for which to operate. The government has entered into these Section 7 agreements, which are, in our opinion, unconstitutional based on the decisions made by the Supreme Court of Canada going back to 2000.
And pause it just for a second. Oh, it's almost over. You can leave it there. What I am going to say here is if Danielle Smith starts giving chunks of Alberta away, because there's going to be a minimum of probably a year between the binding the non-binding referendum and the binding referendum. Danielle Smith has said in her own words, it could be 2.5 years. God knows how much of Alberta Danielle Smith may give away, especially if she has her eyes on Ottawa. And I don't think there's any getting that back if she does sign it away.
Yes. But now let's go to what we were actually talking about, which is maybe Liberals changing their minds about the reality that they're living in and opening their eyes and doing exactly the opposite of what they've been screaming about for the past 10 years. Jen Gerson from The Line says, have Carney and the rest given up on Canada already? I don't think they ever were on Canada at any point.
Yeah, and hopefully we have the timestamps ready for this. But if you're conservative and you're a supporter of Alberta independence, you're absolutely going to love these clips. She considers herself to be slightly right of center, a slight conservative. She is a liberal through and through. I watch this on a regular basis. It's not the biggest podcast, but I like to watch liberal podcasts where they strategize and they talk about inside politics, so you can kind of see what's coming and what do they see as threats, things like this. She's also from Alberta, so it's a good way to see what the other side is saying about Alberta and also about Canada. And she was almost in tears for this entire episode, or at least it looked like it. And what she was saying is she's lost all hope in Canada, number one. And number two, the second series of clips we're going to go into is about Alberta independence. And not only her, but Lukaszuk and some other heavy hitters from the Federalist side against Alberta independence seem to think Alberta independence may win the vote on October 19th. And she gives a lot of the reasons why.
And again, this is the same Jen Gerson that, for example, was on stage with Jason Kenney and others discussing why Alberta shouldn't leave. Not a debate. They were having a conversation blocked off for everyone.
Well, and if you do want to know what's going on the other side in Alberta or even in federal Canada, I do recommend the podcast. I do not say do not subscribe to them. I do not want to kind of lend them any support.
I just can't continue to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think these people are full of shit. I think this government's full of shit. And I think that as long as the Canadian electorate looks around and sees that Pierre Poilievre is worse, they'll continue to give him a pass for purely symbolic bullshit while the Americans continue to vassalize us. And this is the path we're on now. And I think that it would take a monumental act of political will to push us out of that path. And I don't think it's there.
Well,
I don't think it's there.
In your column, you wrote the Gordie Howe Bridge column. And you had this great line that it was one sentence in your article, but it's the one I keep thinking back to, which is that, and I'm going to paraphrase it here, but the Prime Minister is trying to build a new middle powers coalition, and the Europeans are going to notice that he keeps retreating at home. It's going to be real hard to rally Europe to the cause of liberal democratic values as defended by the middle powers when you're caving on bridge tolls and digital service taxes. And I don't know if the Ontario Transportation Minister, Minister Zarkaria, read your column or not, but he was certainly thinking in the same tone, because when he was doing his not angry, disappointed routine about the island airport, he said explicitly that a government that is going to cave in the face of this kind of local opposition is not going to be able to get things done. And I think one of our colleagues at our meeting this morning, when we were just talking business stuff, made a really good point. I thought he phrased it very elegantly. The reason we have a federal government is to have a body, a layer, an order, whose purpose it is to oversee the national interest, even and especially when that means overriding purely local concerns. That's what it's for. And this is something, we've talked about this in other contexts, right? Like, this touches on a lot of infrastructure, pipelines being a great example.
Okay, and you can leave it there. We can go right into the next clip there.
Okay.
And again, I hope grabbed the right timestamps that I left here. And
She
again,
put them in wrong at first.
And I just,
So that's a classic example. Sorry, Jen, you lagged there. I started talking, but you were still going. You go.
and I don't know why I would continue to work for that country. Like, why am I here? Why are my kids here? I mean, I could have a better life in the United States. I can qualify for a visa. I could I'm talented. We've got enough money. We could just go. I don't like where America is or where it's going. But if the option is to side with the bully or to side with the person who will never get up, I know what option is better for me and my kids. It ain't gonna be the vast.
and pause it. I want to continue to play this clip, but again, these are fervent liberal supporters. They fully have their elbows up. They want Mark Carney to go harder. They don't think he's going hard enough, and they think because he's not going hard enough, he's going to lose, and they're looking to flee to the United States. The other guy says he already has EU citizenship. He's thinking about buying a castle over there, and he wants to go live in Europe because a castle would be cheaper. They're ready to abandon Canada right now rather than have their elbows up. They know the direction even Mark Carney is driving this country. If liberals start to leave the country, the voter demographic for conservatives may start to look a lot better. And these aren't the only liberals I've seen over the last couple of days. There is a major fracture within the Liberal Party. Mark Carney gave an amazing speech, they said, at Davos. I think it rallied the liberals behind him, and they see nothing but not even inaction, but literally concessions and everything that they don't want. And they think Canada is doomed. They're looking for the exit plan now.
But again, she believes she is conservative, even though most of her ideals are very liberal.
Oh, no, actually, I looked it up. She does not think she's conservative. She thinks she's a middle ground, which she's not. She's extremely liberal there.
We know what middle ground means in Canada.
State. And that just furthers the cycle of decline, right? Because it just means that people who have talent and money just leave. And that's the thing that I'm struggling with, because I'm just like, I want to fight for this country. Like, I think this country is worth fighting for. I'm willing to accept material sacrifices. I'm not interested in bullshit consultants who are only interested in perpetuating the Liberal Party in perpetuity. But all I see is like stun-fuck liberals who are still playing politics as status quo. And I see conservatives who are increasingly brain-rotted by the very same ideology that is corroding the liberal norms, both in Canada and the United States, and especially the United States. And I start to see, and I see a population that is being palliated. That's it. They're being palliated with like these symbolic measures with no action, and they think they're winning. And I'm just, what's left? What's left? What's left for me to be here for, man?
Yeah, I know. Then I'm with you.
Like, that's
I'm a citizen of the European Union.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And they go on for quite a while, and they bring it up throughout the episode. And again, this is a extremely liberal podcast. I think it's almost a daily podcast.
I think you see it as an extremely liberal podcast.
It is an extremely liberal podcast. Anybody can watch it and then leave their opinions below. I see other people talk about it as well. They refer to it as a liberal podcast. That being said, I lost my train of thought, so you can go there, Nat.
Well, we still have more clips. Jenker, again, now it's further into the episode.
It's going to matter. Now, here's the other concern in all of this, is that it's really hard to do voter modeling on this, because we know that
And again, now she's going to go into Alberta independence. Those first couple of clips we showed were about Canada and how liberals are losing hope in Mark Carney. They're looking to the United States, and these are people that absolutely hate Donald Trump, have their elbows up to the maximum, but even they can see the collapse of Canada coming. Now, another subject they typically bring up is Alberta independence. She's on the ground. She's on the federalist side within Alberta. It's very interesting. Even her take on this, even she thinks Alberta has independence has a great chance of winning it. And if she's saying that, and you're seeing a fracture in that, I think as long as we come out in numbers, we're going to win on October 19th.
the last referendum that happened in 2021 was the equalization referendum. That got a 40% turnout, and that got a 40% turnout because it had happened in tandem with a municipal election. What is the turnout going to be on a referendum that isn't being held in tandem with any other election? What is the voter turnout going to be on a referendum where there's going to be 9 other questions on the table? What is the voter turnout going to be when you have Elections Alberta saying we need 60,000 poll workers to manage an election that complicated because of the number of referenda questions that are going to be asked? What's the voter turnout going to be when Elections Alberta says we don't have the requisite poll numbers? What's the voter turnout going to be when the polling workers are overwhelmingly being called from the separatist side because the separatists are being very active and engaged about getting their people to be poll workers? What's the voter going to turn out going to be if the polling stations are overwhelmingly stationed in rural Alberta as opposed to downtown Calgary or central Calgary? What's the voting turnout going to be if a polling station in Calgary is taking 3 hours to process people through these complicated ballots, whereas a polling station in rural Alberta is getting people through in 20 minutes, right? And we know that these aren't hypothetical because in the last municipal election there were 2 and 3 hour lineups to vote as a result of recent changes that the provincial government had made, massively overcomplicating the ballot and the voting system. So the type of people who show up and are willing to stand for hours in line to vote to stay or leave are very, very different depending on how much commitment they have to the cause. Like, we are facing a scenario where the logistics of voting have the potential to artificially sway the actual final result to something that doesn't look like 70-30 at all. The vote belongs to the people. The vote doesn't belong to the poll. The vote belongs to the people who show up.
Okay, and you can leave it there. We're going to go into the last clip, and she finally... And we have to be very aware of their strategies because she typically talks about the strategies on her show of the Federalist side, and she is hooked into the heavy hitters within Alberta on the Federalist side, and she's eventually going to go into mail-in voting. That's their solution for this. We have a lot of advantages going into October 19th. We need to make sure we have ride sharing ready to go in case polling stations get shut down like they did in Arizona and other places in the United States. We have the highly motivated side. We need to make sure we engage that and that we can get everybody to the polls.
But what's insane as well is she might want to go leave to the US, and yet she's still very against, I think because she thinks she has to be, Alberta's independence. So she's willing to move herself and her family away, but she's not willing to help the province move itself away and protect itself, and for her to be able to continue to even live there and continue to enjoy everything she does enjoy within Canada. And she's so extremely sad she has to leave. Well, you can actually stay, but leave the insanity that is Canada, and yet she's still really against independence.
Well, it's very interesting because as they went throughout that entire podcast, and usually, as they went throughout that entire podcast, they started bringing up all these talking points I hear in Alberta independence, and she's on the ground in Alberta. It's really starting to seep in. You can tell she's seeing the flags. She's seeing the motivated people on the ground. It is getting to her. It has broken her. The direction Carney is bringing the country has also broken her. And it's not just her. It is a lot of Liberals within Canada right now. Alberta independence is winning. And it's a shame Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith did not use Alberta independence and other independence movements to their advantage as an attack mechanism against the federal government to fix the country, because what Alberta independence is pointing out and needs to be fixed is right. It is what needs to be fixed. And when you see conservatives holding hands with Liberals singing Kumbaya, nobody trusts in the Conservatives anymore. They start viewing them as a uniparty. And another thing there, when she points out all those advantages we're going to have on election day, her husband happens to be a heavy hitter and one of the biggest pollers within Canada. So this is where she's getting a lot of this information. She understands that 70-30, but what her husband's telling her is even 30% is more than enough to push this thing over the edge. Another thing her husband must know is a lot of Alberta independence supporters aren't picking up the phone and aren't taking those polls. Even with 30%, which is a low number, well, we very likely might win, but we could have up to 50 or 60%, which is a guaranteed victory for us.
And again, it's that same cognitive dissonance where they can't hold two thoughts in their head. And the solution for her is moving to the US, to a country she thinks is doing terribly, at least ideologically, and at least in the policies and the things that the Trump administration is implementing. And yet she wants to continue to shackle Alberta. And again, they can't hold these two thoughts in their head.
Exactly. Like, let's go. And she leaves it with and this is why I watch liberal media. I want to know what the freaking strategies are against Alberta independence. And she reveals what a lot of the strategies are on the Federalist side on the ground against Alberta independence. And that's the primary reason I watch this show. When you watch interviews with Lukasik and things like that, they hold the cards tight to the chest. She doesn't. And the game strategy here ends up being mail-in ballots, mail-in ballots, mail-in ballots. She says it multiple times throughout the show. That's the strategy. They want to fix this thing through mail-in balloting.
Well, fix.
Ward off the despair. Go. Go register with Elections Alberta for a mail-in ballot if you live in Alberta. Spare yourself the drama of a line, and no, don't even just do that for yourself. Go send the link to everyone you know in Alberta and get them to get their mail-in ballot. Vote early. Vote early.
Vote early, vote often.
No, vote just once. But except often in this case. But yes, yes, vote early.
We'll be back in a moment. We're going to talk
Okay,
about
and you
progressive-
can leave it there. And she's hooked right into Lukasik and everybody else. You're going to have to figure the next strategy is for Forever Canada and the other groups on the Federalist side to start registering people and handing out information on how they can get mail-in balloting. That's going to be their strategy. And then they're going to point to that strategy when all the mail-in ballots come in for one side at midnight. And it looks very strange the next morning when everybody wakes up.
And again, it's a story we've lived through both in the US and Canada and elsewhere for the past decades, I would say.
Well, and again, what was Lukasik's strategy? Now, Lukasik's strategy, he can't pull it off because the legislation in Alberta is working against him. He wants to bring in voting machines. He's complaining about manual voting, and he wants to bring in voting machines. Now, I don't think he's going to be able to do that, at least not for the non-binding referendum. By the time the binding referendum comes around, God, who knows what's possible and what kind of legislation Danielle Smith's going to pass. But her strategy of registering people for mail-in ballots is something the Forever Canada side might just pull off, and that could be their strategy there.
True. But now let's go back to your comments, and then we'll head into Alberta politics. Sean says, Carney is doing a great job from his perspective, but a great job for Carney isn't going to do good for most Canadians. And we've already seen it. It's become more and more obvious. And yet they don't want to see it because they still believe in the systems that hold them back.
Mark Carney's strategy at this point is stop asking me questions. My plan is the Democrats are going to win the midterms and they're going to win in 2028. And we're going to go back to a new globalist order. And I'm going to be the head of it. And this is why he's hiring Democrats into his administration to run the PMO office, because he's sucking up to the Democrats, knowing if they get in, he can continue the same old deal, but renew it for 16 years.
Sean says, I was looking for those Latino-style candles that has Jesus, but the goofy ones would have leftist icons. I went to a store that sells them, and they had no Dr. Fauci candles anymore, apparently. They're called veladoras, in case anybody wanted to know. Sean says, it's annoying. Went to another live stream because then a guy calmed the troll in me, and I just have to troll some other channel. They keep me out of trouble. Okay. Sean also says, vassalize. I don't think that's a word. Well, she used it, so I guess it's a word for her. Sean says,
and this is the other thing. I've been watching a lot of liberal media because once I see the cracks, I'm almost addicted to hate watching these people, especially watching their minds break. She was talking about moving to the United States and how the United States has a better economy and Canada is going to become vassalized. But other liberal commentators, they're mainly focusing on manufacturing and how it's absolutely being hollowed out right now because they're on a year-to-year review and they do not see the future of Canada looking good either. This is why even a bad deal at this point for Carney would be a good deal because it would keep Canada from vassalization and it would keep their sovereignty. But if he wants to keep his elbows up, Canada is absolutely going to lose its sovereignty. I wouldn't be surprised if it became the 51st state. This is why Alberta needs to become independent so it can be an equal partner with the United States.
again, I don't think vassalize is a word. Sean says,
Thanks, Nat.
hit the gym first, hit the gym first, boss Karen. Talking about Jen Gerson. We can give her that suggestion. Sean says, so her entire existence is based on hate for America and its people. She really has adopted the Laurentian elite history as her personality. And again, most people, righteous Canadians, think that that's the way to go and that's what they need to do to protect and defend themselves because that's what they've been told. They don't even want to think about it.
Well, because they're so engaged in politics, even though they're on the left, they see the writing on the wall before the non-politically engaged elbows up people that do. That's why they're talking about leaving the country. They realize if they don't leave the country now, they could very well become trapped because what the other guy,
their own things that they suggest.
because what the other bald guy was talking about there was, I can buy a castle or a 16-room monastery that has been unconsecrated in Europe. And he was looking it up online during the show. And he said, I can sell my Toronto home for that. Yeah, if you sell it now, and there's no guarantee guarantees you can even sell it now. And if you sell it, it's going to be at a discount. Pretty soon, it's not going to be worth shit. It's going to be worth the same prices as a shack in the EU. So you're not going to have anything to trade. But the second thing is, because they're politically engaged, they understand a lot of people are shorting the Canadian dollar right now. It could be 50 cents to every $1 American dollar soon, and that is going to prevent them from leaving the country at that point. And a lot of other people, that's why politically engaged liberals are starting to crack and think, and maybe I need to leave the country now before it completely falls off the economic cliff. And it must be coming close if liberals are talking about it.
And also before the tax that they themselves suggested gets implemented, the exit tax, where or the progressive or an ongoing tax that they want to give to Canadians that have left already. Sean says, oh, you'll never see a conservative get near power when you have mail-in voting. Trust me, the left loves mail-in ballots it's like their favorite thing.
Oh, there is great news coming out of the United States, by the way, and it has to do with mail-in balloting. I've complained a lot about the SAVE Act because the conservatives just won't pass it. That means they're fine with certain states having no voter ID, mail-in balloting, and a lot of other things. But the Supreme Court is being forced to take a case that should be heard just before October or at the beginning of October that has to do with mail-in balloting. Trump has forced this all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they're going to have to make a decision which could go even further than the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act was primarily designed to stop illegals from voting in states that don't have voter ID. What this Supreme Court case could decide is mail-in balloting would only be able to be given to people that register for it. Right now, they blanket states with every single address. So
Which is insane.
This would be absolutely huge. But if you're seeing something like that going on in the United States and they're awake to mail-in balloting is completely corrupt, we don't want it in Canada, or we need to get rid of it at least.
Holden says Democrats winning does not mean a better trade deal at all. They know how far left Canada is. Dems would love to make Canada the 51st because they also want to make Puerto Rico and etc. for their own advantages as well.
Yeah, I completely actually agree with that. That being said, we'll have to see what happens.
Apparently the stream was freezing for people, but it is fixed now. So good. Because I was checking to see if it was freezing. It might have been on either YouTube's end, because on mine, because I look at it on my phone, it wasn't freezing. So apologies for that, though.
Yeah, I thought it might be freezing because everybody dropped out at one point and then came back in.
Silverfeet says, monumental political like Alberta independence. Exactly. Philip Vespa says, they won't leave. I have heard this rhetoric from leftist Americans. The first and only people to leave will be conservative. Independence is our only option.
Well,
and also her only option, but she's retarded, apparently.
This is the thing. You're right, the first to leave are conservatives, and they've already left en masse. This is why Mark Carney's poll numbers are so high and why he can maintain them steady, because conservatives are leaving en masse, and he's bringing in a replacement block of voters of new immigrants. But liberals that are politically engaged, that understand the economic battlefield of Canada, understand that cliff we've already gone off of. It's only a matter of time before the dollar goes down and they can't get out of the country. They're trying to sell their homes right now. They also want to get out of the country.
Silverfeet says, Oregon, California, and New York welcomes you. Well, yeah, she can go live there and see if her utopia works better in the U.S. with Mamdani.
Well, and I think she would move to Washington, D.C., which is over 90% Democrat at this point, because her husband's a polar and she does politics as well.
Primors 007, hello, says, sorry, Nat, I'm having a very stressful and angry weekend. That's okay. I hope your weekend turns around, though. Happy weekend to everybody, by the way.
Nat stresses me out all the time.
Again, someone yesterday said I have a patience of a saint. I agree with you. Primors 007.
Am I the patient?
Primors 007 says, and okay, now it makes more sense. Says YouTube may be filtering out some of my comments. Oh, unfortunate. Because again, especially if it's someone that I know and I recognize their username, I usually don't censor or delete any comments at all, unless it's an obvious troll that's really just annoying everybody else as well. And if you all ask me to. And also, if you send links or emojis, your comments might also be filtered, because we used to get a lot of spam. Oh,
and I will say right now, next week I think we're going to start on Tuesday. We were supposed to do it last week, but we were prepping things for the show. We're going to have a more US-based politics show, hopefully helping out JD Vance and the Republicans for the midterms. We want JD Vance to win in 2028, and we want to support the Republicans in the midterms because in case the process of independence gets lengthened out for the binding referendum, we're going to have to hope the president after Trump is going to support Alberta independence and recognize Alberta as an independent nation. The most likely candidate for that is JD Vance because he is the most populist candidate right now.
Silverfeet says her mental gymnastics put such a smile on Guy's face. What a beauty. I don't put such a smile on his face.
Well, Nat told me last night because I was watching that Line podcast. She goes, "What the hell are you watching that again for? I hate it." And I said, "Well, I got to know what's going on the other side." Sometimes they talk Federalist independence, Alberta independence politics. And man, they had a mental breakdown on the show. It was freaking great.
Jennifer Peterson, hello, and says to Primors, I think you're right. Didn't see any comments from you other than the sorry post. Yeah, me either. So if you want to write it again and maybe use some symbols to disguise some of the letters, you can do so. Primors007 says, I don't even answer the door to the census bastards. I would end up having a wellness visit. And we know what happens during those. Sometimes they take you to the back of a Tim Hortons and maid you to death.
Yeah, and I've kind of been looking at other polling, other elections and things like that. I think the lowest amount of support we could have is 20% and still possibly win if we had everybody come out. But if we have 30 or 40 or even 50% support for Alberta independence, that's easily enough to put us over the line if we have a 90% turnout, which our side should. The Federalist side very, very likely might not, especially if there's a long wait on the day. I also checked what day October 19th was. It's on a Monday. A lot of people are going to be at work. I'm fully expecting the Alberta independence side to either take the day off work or to make sure they go before or after work. Our side is the motivated side. They know it.
Yes. And hold on. Primors007 says, I guess the last comment never made it either. Guess I'm too extreme. And again, if you want to leave extreme comments, you can always go over to RUMBLE. We're streaming simultaneously. So you'll find the stream there with the same thumbnail. And Rumble usually never censors anything.
And let's go into
yes, Alberta Politics. And then we'll continue reading your lovely comments.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
Let's start with, I still have her face up there. Let's start with Rebel News giving a fact check saying, quote, Alberta's threshold for initiating a citizen-led referendum is relatively high compared to other countries. I'm guessing people are now saying it's too easy. A fact check says Alberta's citizen-initiated referendum threshold is anything but low.
Yeah, and we have an extremely high standard, especially considering we have to have a non-binding referendum leading into a binding referendum, and then we're supposed to reach all these other hurdles. There's certain things they're trying to put in our way, saying we have to get approval from other provinces. BS to that. We'll have the non-binding referendum. We're going to jump over that hurdle. Then we're going to jump over the binding referendum hurdle. And then we're going to have a unilateral declaration of independence at that point.
If not, yeah.
Well, and Danielle Smith is the one trying to extend this thing out to 2.5 years or more, she's saying. It's ridiculous at this point.
But next, let's see this from Jason Levine saying, quote, oh boy, an endorsement from Erin O'Toole. The tool is usually the political kiss of death. The establishment is pulling out all the stops to protect the system that has already rewarded them with wealth, influence, and power. The people with the most to lose and the largest bank accounts do not want the system to change because the system works for them. For the rest of us, the system has worked against us for decades. Every establishment figure who rushes to defend the status quo helps more Albertans recognize what this really is. It's not left versus right. It's the people at the top versus the rest of us.
And you can click into Erin O'Toole's post there. I don't necessarily want to even read it, but we are going to go over the video there. Okay. And this is who he's praising. And I think he has a lot more credibility than Erin O'Toole. But even that being said, this is an absolutely ridiculous take. The Federalists really don't have much to vote yes on. And this is the thing. This is why people aren't going to be motivated to go out to the polls. And a lot of people that are on the fence, if they actually start to think about it, they're either going to vote independence or they're probably going to stay at home the day of the vote.
Erin O'Toole says, what a great message from Brett Wilson, personal, honest, and sincere. I met Brett in my work with military families before I ran for office. He has a huge heart, track record of giving back, and a deep love for his province and country. Proud to call him a friend. And this is from Vote to Stay.
Hi, Brett Wilson. Born in Saskatchewan, lived in Calgary most of my life. Absolutely love what I've done in Calgary and all my time on that show called Dragon's Den.
So to forecast that you're going to get 2% of a market that's right now held by 75 players with 75 product lines, you're delusional.
Oh, but all this money's for charity anyway. I understand. Your kids have enough, my kids have enough.
Do we shake your hand?
But that's not really the business of my story. I began as a drilling engineer working in the oil fields of Western Canada. I understood what the business looked like. I understood what hard work, perseverance, and truly courage meant to take risks and build my own profile and my business. Canada is an incredible place to build business. I also love giving.
Pause it just for a sec. I want to keep going through this. This is a highly edited video with I guess what you would call a semi-celebrity within Canada, which I would disagree with. But that being said, he gives no real reason why we should stay in Canada other than Canada is a great place to do business. And I'm going to lean on the history. I used to be an oil worker. Canada's a great place to do business. I'm a millionaire. What about for everybody else? And what about what the future prospects of a free and independent Alberta offers to the average man without regulations, without taxes?
And to his legacy and his family and his future.
What builds my legacy in terms of what I give to my children and give to my community. I love the way we work together. Now, I hear people saying those opportunities don't exist the way they once did, and I agree. I understand their frustration. The last 10 years, I don't even want to name the former prime minister. I did not like what he was doing to our country. But here we are. We're at a point where we're working collaboratively, and I think that the way our leadership is poised in Alberta, pipelines, data centers, and all sorts of other major projects are moving forward. Investment is returning to Alberta. It's job creation and it's investments. And I see a wonderful determination to build, to compete, and thanks to being in Alberta, we will win. Canada's not perfect. Never has been. And we've only got some real work to do.
Yeah, Alberta's going to win its independence. Is what it's going to win. You can kind of leave it there, but he talks about Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau didn't break the minds of liberals like Mark Carney is with his elbows up campaign. They're literally talking about fleeing the country, moving to the United States at this point. They realize we're at the economic precipice where we may go off a cliff as a country. And I happen to agree with them. Canada's going off of that economic cliff. They've already gone off that cliff. Alberta needs to pull the parachute now and gain its independence before they go off with them.
Oh, and he's talking about all this great investment coming into Alberta. Yeah, that happened after the talks for independence got actually serious. So might that be telling you something that companies from the outside are looking at the possibility of a maybe independent Alberta and are liking it rather than moving away from it like they are from the rest of Canada?
Well, a lot of the major investments actually being boxed out. Alberta has still managed to be successful even with the federal government trying to box out the United States with big natural resource deals and other things.
But next, empowered Canadians, as equalization is one of the most misunderstood parts of Canada's federation. It is funded with taxpayer dollars collected by the federal government, but collecting taxpayers' money does not give Ottawa a blank check to be distributed however it chooses. Why does it seem like it does?
This is absolutely ridiculous propaganda. They're trying to prop up equalization with a couple of improvements we can do. Absolutely ridiculous. No equalization payments, no more. Alberta independence. Vote yes on option 2. That's all I can say, because there will be no more equalization once Alberta gets its independence. Oh, maybe there will. Maybe it will be British Columbia and Saskatchewan, but it sure in the hell won't be Alberta after we're independent.
But also not just equalization in payments, but there's a very weird distribution as to how Canada currently works for voting. Alberta Meme says Canada voting power by province. And there you see the outsized influence that certain provinces have over others, because that is where the power beds of Canada lie, which are also crumbling at this point.
Yeah, these are the fat cats of Canada, and they're all on the East Coast.
And we also shouldn't forget about that for when voting option 2, that it is also a vote for finally being able to decide your own destiny politically as well, and being engaged and being allowed to be politically engaged within an independent formation of birth of a nation.
Absolutely. And I kind of said it the last show, and nobody seems to have the balls to say it, but we would be retarded not to vote for independence. Once we get our independence, if we did the worst we possibly could do, fell flat on our face, say there was a world war and oil became unpopular almost overnight, everybody went to green energy. If all the worst things happened back to back, Alberta still has 2 safety nets there, the United States and Canada. Both of them would want us. Both of them would create a bidding war and offer us a great deal to come back. Not going out on our own and trying to be a free and independent country, when you have two safety nets there, that just shows, I think, the fear of the people. We need to vote for independence.
The instilled fear of the people. Yvette DeVos says, that's funny. My internet has been freezing all day at my house here in Red Deer, Alberta, so I just thought the freezing was on my end and not yours. Again, here in Mexico, which is where we film from, it wasn't freezing. It might just be Canada realizing they don't like us anymore.
Well, it could be the federal government. I wouldn't be surprised if they turned the internet off in Alberta leading up to the October 19th referendum.
Sean says, he loves doing this to me. Sean says, I want an MMWG 2SLGBTQQIIAA plus new pause world pause order. Yeah, I mean, it'd be great if they reordered themselves. Sean says, fudge, what the heck is with YouTube? I don't know. Because Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's in the US. But again, on our end, it looks crystal clear.
Yeah.
Sean says, don't worry, Alberta, I will move to Prince Edward Island and be ruler in short time to support your independence. Again, I'm sure you actually would have a pretty good chance up over there or anywhere where you really go. Silverfeet says, if anyone who wants to see all the cheating that was done with election machines, check out Why We Vote on Badlands Media. Oh, I love Badlands.
Yeah,
most of the time.
I know all about it, and I highly recommend doing some research if you haven't looked at these election machines. Also, we need voter ID, no election machines, and no mail-in balloting in a new and free Alberta. Now, Canada and the United States aren't going to do it. Trump's trying his best, but he's going to have so much resistance. He can get some of it done, but getting all of it done is going to be hard. And under Mark Carney, you're only going to get more mail-in balloting, more electronic balloting machines. And I wouldn't be surprised if they got rid of voter ID at some point, or they accepted a foreign ID to vote.
Mm-hmm. Primrose 7 says, to us, not in the guy, vassalize, verb, to make a vassal of. It's a word, guy, got your back. I didn't know you could verb it. I didn't know you could make it into a verb. I know what a vassal, like a vassal state of something is, but yeah.
Thank you for having my back.
Sean says, I was thinking of the other vassal. And Primrose says, yeah, that's Vaseline. Kim Pangeli says, I don't think the Dems will win the midterms. Looks like the DSA has a good chance of winning nominations. And from what I understand, Democrat voters are saying that they will vote Republican if the DSA gets in, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we're going to have some information about the DSA coming out later and how China is pumping major money into the DSA right now. Very interesting, but it's going to be a close one for the midterms, I think. I think the 2028 election is not going to be as close. If you put Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance on the same ticket, I think they're milquetoast, and that's what the United States voters want. It's going to be very hard to frame them as even worse than the Orange Man. What happens at this point? Everybody that comes after Trump is worse than Trump. They just kind of have to keep radicalizing the situation. But when J.D. Vance and Rubio do interviews, they're well-spoken. They're very, very middle of the lane as well. Yeah. And I think this is what the United States wants, especially with the radical left and the radical right starting to horseshoe and coming together.
And again, because the Democrats are left with the option of either becoming hyper-radical as well, and the ones that want to continue to be sane-ish, I guess.
But I will say the midterms are going to be a lot closer. I think the one good thing about the midterms is the Republicans do have a lot more money in their war chest right now than the Democrats. The thing is about the DSA only running in a certain amount of elections, but the elections they are running in, they probably will win. They're running in radicalized areas, and that kind of messaging works in the midterms because it's specific areas. But when you try to run a DSA candidate in a 2028 election, having the whole nation vote, people aren't voting for that garbage. People do not want communism as a whole.
Yeah. From Mars 7 says, Vaseline is only for a single gentleman. Ew. Philip Vespa says, if that's the case, Guy, Canada is trending towards a Chavista-style regime with the NDP. And yet they don't fully realize it because, again, the NDP are the ones that right now say the radical things that then get implemented in a more milquetoast way, at least get talked about in a more milquetoast way by the Liberals.
Well, not really. Basically, the NDP suggests the idea, say, of government-run grocery stores, and the mainstream media runs with it. And then Mark Carney just literally says the same thing about 6 or 12 months later, and they start implementing it. They just normalize the idea. They don't even pitch it in a lesser way anymore.
Mm-hmm. Roland Halleck, hello, says, never change in Canada when 2 provinces have more seats than the rest and half are sold to China.
Yeah.
And again, that was already confirmed by CSIS, and yet we all forgot about that too. Primoz 007 says that the curse words keep getting filtered out. Well, that might be the issue. But we don't filter out curse words, so it is a YouTube thing. Primoz 007 says, can someone in the U.S. start a petition to accept good stock Albertans into the U.S.? Buddy Brown mentioned doing that a couple of times in his videos, and I know U.S. officials watch his channel.
Well, Trump kind of did in a way, meaning Red Seal workers and things like that. There's a special visa for them to go into the United States. And a lot of Red Seal workers are construction workers, electricians, plumbers from Alberta and Saskatchewan. So.
And 416, Sean Vision says, good evening. Good evening. Thank you for being here. And just as an update, Rulwelco, I guess, says, Calgary here, YouTube is steady for me. And Sean Vision in Prince Edward Rhode Island says the internet is also good, or that YouTube is also good. So it might be because Sean is in Washington.
Okay, let's go into the next section here.
I don't know what sector is getting messed up, messy internet. But yes, let's get into Alberta personalities, and then we'll continue reading your comments. And yes, RUMBLE, I can see all your comments. I will read them right after this segment.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done. We're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Let's start with this from Let's Talk Alberta, saying, quote, we're so pleased to have had Benoit Trudeau's experienced input in many of our presentations. Ben actually doesn't think Alberta needs to take the drastic measure of being an independent nation. Let's Talk Alberta is all about listening to all rational, respectful input.
He's had a lot of good input because he's talked a lot about what happened in Quebec and things like that. So he has a good perspective, and he's been going around on the ground to a lot of these in-person meetings.
I'm Ben Trudeau. I'm in favor of public participation in the privilege we have to speak about our province and our future, and that great opportunity that Let's Talk Alberta give us to do so. So I invite you to join us in all these talks across the province, and I love Alberta strong and free. And we have to remember that sovereignty is taken, not negotiated. Thanks.
And absolutely fantastic. And he's been putting out a lot of interesting points that I didn't know about Quebec over the months.
And again, Let's Talk Alberta, but also Max from Freedom Calendar also streams most, if not all, of the presentations. So in case you can't make it, but you're interested in one of the speakers or what people are saying, you can always go to Freedom Calendar or Max's channel as well. And Let's Talk Alberta's channel too. Just a little promo there. Next, Global News says, Premier Mo faces criticism over, this is from Saskatchewan, faces criticism over taxpayer-funded Lindsey Graham funeral trip.
And I'm not a big Scott Moe supporter, especially he tries to frame what you would think is a conservative policy is in protecting freedoms, but it does exactly the opposite in the long term. One of the big things is the gun grab. He's saying, sign up and register your firearm and we'll protect them until the federal government is willing to pay market price. But when they're willing to pay market price, then you have to hand them over. That's not protecting firearms. That being said, I think he made the right decision here. He was given a special invitation by the family to go to the funeral. We need to be making inroads with the United States, especially Saskatchewan and Alberta, who initially didn't put the liquor ban on. This was a time to negotiate and things like that. Mark Carney should have went down there. The problem was he wasn't invited, so he couldn't show up. It would have looked freaking weird.
But do you think it should have been paid by taxpayers?
I'm fine with it, especially the shaky legs the relationship with the United States is on right now. Yeah. Going to that funeral with so many heavy hitters that are going to be there, I think it is a good thing, and ultimately it does help Canada, especially when he was given a special invitation by the family themselves.
And lastly, God, it's this never-ending story. National Post says, quote, high school teacher Jim McMurdy was fired for refusing to jump on the Kamloops mass graves narrative bandwagon. Now McMurdy is heading to the BC Supreme Court in a case that he hopes will expose the truth about Kamloops, writes Michael Higgins.
Yeah, we can hope. Ideological judges, I don't expect much coming out from this. That being said, this is the biggest government-assisted hoax in Canadian history. This is ridiculous that we're still going through this. The tens of billions of dollars that was given out on the back of this hoax as well, just before the election, so Trudeau could get reelected.
And again, the transparency of it all, and the idiocy of it all, and the fact that nothing has been found. All they found were roots and stumps that were apparently blipping on some sort of radar that isn't even supposed to be used for that kind of research.
I think you're wrong, Nat. They didn't find tree stumps because they refused to dig.
To dig, yes, but then what they were seeing then got confirmed that it was tree roots.
Well, no, they said it's possibly tree roots, but they're not going to. They're refusing to dig them up at this point, and they have to refuse to dig them up because then people might want their money back. They're tens of billions of dollars.
Exactly. Back to your comments, and then we'll head into Alberta's Canada. Sean says, Oregon, no, not Washington. Sorry, they're basically the same in my head. I know they're not. Apologies. But I'm not far from Washington. Both states are disasters.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And I used to live down in Washington State for quite a while. The eastern half of both Oregon and Washington are much different. I wish they would break off and join another state that's far more conservative.
Yeah. I used to take a lot of trips more to like downtown Seattle, and it's gross. It was gross back then. This was like 12 years ago. Sean says, I thought he was from another Polish dude, but he is from Quebec. Makes sense.
Yeah.
No, Sean is leaving. See you guys. Apologies. I'm guessing either the internet or we bored him. I hope not. Philip Espa says, these forever Canadians don't understand that this is not about a pipeline. It's about over 100 years of unequal treatment from Ottawa. And that it's the system that's designed that way. And the fact that the federal government, because it doesn't benefit them, doesn't want to change it and will never change it because they can continue to operate in the same way they have. What benefit does it have for them to actually fix the broken things that Alberta continues to notice and to have to suffer through? Nothing. So they won't do it.
Yeah.
Roland Halleck says, Carney talking about hiring Singh terrorist, to become his minister of what? Tourism?
Jagmeet Singh. They're talking about him taking over the tourism office in Canada is failing up hundreds of thousands of dollars in that paycheck. Absolutely ridiculous. Politicians need to have term limits. They shouldn't be able to run for an extended period of time and make it an ultimate career. And when they get out, they shouldn't be rewarded with stupid jobs like this because he had a coalition with the Liberals and voted yes on everything.
And again, it's also, he might be bringing in the kind of demographics that they want to bring more in of anyways, because they make good workers. Sean says, no, I got to go to the store before they close, Nat. That almost sounded like I was a jealous girlfriend and he was trying to explain to me. It's fine, Sean. Please be safe out there. We'll see you soon. Primo might still be here by the time you get back.
She is a very jealous girlfriend. Now she's the jealous wife.
No, I'm not. I was at one point in my life.
She gets jealous because the dog likes me more than her.
Okay, in that case, yeah, I am, of course, jealous. She doesn't like you more than she likes me. I take better care of her. I stayed home for 6 months, but she had her back issues.
That was back then. Now she likes me more, though. That's the thing.
Because you feed her in the morning. Promorse Level 7 says, sorry, Nat, for all the rage tonight. That's fine. Please rage all you want. But again, I think a lot of it got censored by YouTube. So write it all back on Are You and Billy.
Well, and again, if you have a lot of rage, I highly recommend going to watch the Line Liberal podcast. It's
going to make it worse.
But only that one episode because they mentally broke and they both mentally broke on that episode. It made me feel real good after knowing they think Alberta independence is in the much stronger position and that Canada, they almost all agree with me now, at least for that one episode, Canada is reaching an economic cliff because usually they have all the opposite opinions, but now their true emotions came out and we could see I was right.
Roland Halleck says, kick the king out of Canada or just make Alberta independent and then you don't deal with the king.
Well, you can't kick the king out of Canada because Canada's under the Westminster system. That's why the only way to get rid of the king is to vote Alberta independence.
Yvette DeVoe says, apparently Jagmeet's salary is going to be $350,000 a year.
Yeah, go figure.
To tell more of his people to come over and maybe find great living conditions. Okay, over on Are You and Billy, Portofino says, yes, we had to leave work early as well. Way too hot to work. Because Crystal says, my truck showed 38 degrees earlier, so screw work, too damn hot for me. Yeah, I agree. Crystal says, Trump 2028, I already got the hat. I want the hat. But I want a pink one.
And if Trump does run in 2028, which he says, I think J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio is the best ticket. But I had kind of suspected earlier, and he had been trying to set her up for it, was that he was going to say Trump 2028 leading up to it, and then say Ivanka Trump 2028. And I think that was the plan. But her husband's kind of really messed it up. And really messed her profile up. I think Marco Rubio, JD Vance are the best ticket period right now.
But also, I was doing some calculations and I was thinking, well, who is going to be 50? Because right now we're at 47. And then I thought, well, if JD or one of them is 48, Marco Rubio or JD for 8 years, and then someone else comes in and is 49, then by that time, Barron Trump could be 50 because he'll be the right age.
Yeah, what she's saying is Barron Trump's going to run as soon as
he runs.
Yeah, well, he will run. He's a shoo-in if he runs, but you can't run till you're 35. He's 20 years old right now, so it's 15 years.
Rusty says, to be fair, the I'm not going to America tweet looks like a bot and only has 41 views. Hardly worth acknowledging as though it's legit. No, but it's a legit sentiment that we do continuously see, even on mainstream news in Canada. Even commentators saying, don't go to the US, don't travel there, it's dangerous. And then they got shot up in Mexico in January.
I just grabbed that one because it was indicative of the mainstream media and a lot of other things. And I wanted to kind of roll that sentiment that's been going on. That narrative has been blasted over the mainstream media for the last year. When travel numbers are down, they blast it all over CTV saying, oh, we have our elbows up, we're against Trump. Well, that's not the case. Even if you do have your elbows up, it looks like you're running to Daddy Trump to get citizenship now.
Let's get into Alberta's Canada. Speaking of the elbows up.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
And let's start with this from CTV News saying, quote, the single biggest household bill draining Canadians' bank accounts right now. Obviously, grocery shopping or groceries or food in general. And we also see the lines at food banks aren't getting any shorter.
Yeah, it only takes 2 bills to break a Canadian family, if not 3. You got your housing's taking almost everything you have, whether you pay rent or you have a mortgage. Food is astronomically high. I mean, you feel it. You're carrying a shopping basket now. People don't have the cart around the store anymore because they can't afford to fill it up. And then number 3, if you are lucky enough to have a car, the insurance bill is absolutely going to break you. Most people have nothing left after those 3 bills.
And I would also add cell phone and internet. It's also insane.
Yeah, I forgot.
And the comparison as to what we were paying back there for 2 of us versus here, and here it's not even that good because there's also a monopoly, is insane, the drastic change in what you get for what you pay for.
Yeah.
And hydro and the taxes. It's insane. But next, the Globe and Mail says, quote, Canada's economy grew 0.3% in May, coming in above expectations. But what about the rest of the months?
Again, this didn't come in above expectations. They're saying it came in above expectations because they reduced their expectations. Their original expectations were 1.5%, not only for the month, but for the year. Then they reanalyzed that and lowered the number, didn't report on it. And now they want to say they're above the new expectation. If Canada only grows by 0.3% this year, that will put them as the poorest nation in the G7.
And not just the G7, but a bunch of other ones as well. I mean, would rank lower than other nations too.
Because the original projection was 1.5%, and that would have made them the second richest G7 country right under the US. But with these new projections that are coming in every month, they're literally the poorest in the G7 or the second poorest in the G7.
What's crazy as well is once you notice how they spin things and how the propagandist media spins things in Canada, it enrages you, but it also gets kind of funny. The things that they continue to try to spin to make Canada look great. I angrily commented on an Instagram post from Curiosity Vancouver. I don't know why I still follow them. I used to follow them a long time ago. But they were saying, oh, the Canadian passport is number 7 in the world. And let's get out there and travel. And because I did that whole passport episode and I had researched into it, the video I made, Canada used to be number 3, between number 2 and 4 in the Henley Passport Index. And because it's fallen over the past 10 years to number 7, now they're trying to prop that up as it being one of the best passports, when in reality, if you actually look into it, the number used to be much higher, and Canada and the passport used to have much better prestige than it does now. But that's how they trick you. They say, oh, this is great, look at this. The numbers are coming in above expectations. It's because you lowered the expectations.
Okay, let's go into the next story if we can.
Speaking of, the Globe and Mail says it's an opinion piece saying, quote, why in Canada do we always strive for the lowest common denominator of healthcare? And then a letter to an editor for today. And it's because it's free.
Well, and this is the thing. It's not because it's free. It's because it's completely corrupt. When it's corrupt, they spend so much money on their healthcare in Canada. They could have a really good system if they didn't have corruption within the system. The amount of corruption within the Canadian system is absolutely ridiculous. Mexico has a much better healthcare system than Canada overall. You don't get state-of-the-art treatments in Canada. If you want stem cell treatment or other kinds of treatment, you have to fly down to Mexico. And that's what Americans and Canadians do at this point.
Also that's saying something. They're saying that Mexico has a better healthcare output and way of managing it than Canada. It's insane. And it sounds insane because Mexico is not doing well at all, actually. But what's funny is that in Mexico, we have the option, if you have insurance, to go pay, and we have a public system. But Canada doesn't offer that option. It doesn't offer the option of innovation as well, which is a lot of people, the few that praise the U.S. healthcare system, say, well, because so many people do pay or insurance pays, there's more incentive to actually innovate and get better instead of just staying at the lowest, cheapest common denominator for healthcare that isn't actually healing anybody.
They can't offer another option. If they had another option, that would root out some of the corruption. And that's the thing.
That too.
As long as it's a monopoly on corruption, then all the money has to go into the corruption pot.
And the UK is having other systems that also only offer free healthcare, which is not free. You pay for it with your taxes, very high taxes for very low output, for very low quality healthcare, are having the exact same issues.
Well, it was very interesting because, again, in that Line podcast, they brought up the Canadian healthcare system when she was talking about, I might have to move to the United States, even though I hate Donald Trump. And then he asked her, well, what about the healthcare? Because they're always bragging about the Canadian healthcare system. She goes, actually, I can get better healthcare in Canada just by paying $2,000 a month. But I would be making so much more in the States. It would be easy to pay for it for me and my family. And it's like everything she said on the show prior to that was how great the Canadian healthcare system is. Now that she's actually looking to move to the United States, the truth is coming out.
Yeah, well, because you have to look at things more objectively. Speaking of not being objective, the National Post says, National Post says, quote, new Canadian military policy prohibits mention of God at ceremonies, calls for spiritual reflections instead. Again, chaplains are barred from talking about God in the military.
Yeah, we brought this up yesterday. I just felt it was really important. The Canadian government, once again, is turning their back on the Lord here.
And on people's religious freedoms.
Less God.
The Western religious freedoms. All the other ones are allowed.
Less God, more MAID program. That's the Canadian way at this point. Mm-hmm. Let's get rid of our seniors.
But let's get back to your comments. Sean says, I wonder how that guy with the knife and the workout shorts at the gym is doing. Maybe he can be prime minister.
Well, there keeps being updates that pop up on my phone because he keeps making radical statements now because I think he's getting a little bit of profile. Yeah.
Retards. Sean says, man, my phone speaker is blown out, but phone service here in the States are cheap.
Yeah.
And if you say that to a Canadian, they'll start yelling at you and say, no, of course they're not. It's horrible. The US is too expensive. No, it's not. Holden says, the system is in place. Conservatives think Pierre is coming to save them. They are so sadly mistaken.
That train,
and the ones that don't have already left, so there's nobody to vote for him.
That train has absolutely sailed. You're locked into Mark Carney for the next 3 years to watch the destruction of Canada. Period. I mean, the only province that has the chance is Alberta, and it's because you have a critical mass of individuals that will vote for independence.
Mm-hmm. Primars 007 says, Rumble makes you verify with a phone number. Oh, now they do that?
I don't know.
Apologies. Can you... I don't know. I wouldn't know how to try to circumvent it. But yeah, I probably wouldn't want to put my phone in either. Tim Burns says, Canadians are jerks when they flock to Mexico. Are you a jerk?
Well, I like it down here. And Canada, there's no way I'm putting up with that. They crossed over every red line. I love freedom. And when somebody comes to take my bodily autonomy, my freedom of speech, and every single other freedom they claim that I have, what am I going to do? I'm either going to wind up in prison or I'm going to leave the country. I decided to leave the country. There was nothing like Alberta independence at the time when we were deciding to leave.
And I'm from Mexico, but I will mention and I will say that there are some liberal Canadians that have moved to Mexico, mainly to the beaches, mainly the boomer kind. And they still want to continue to implement the retardation that they're essentially fleeing back in Canada. Well, because I when we first got back, because I'm from here, but I was like, oh, let me see if there's any like Canadian groups in Mexico, just to see if we can like find someone like-minded that also moved here. And all of them said, we don't want to be talking about jibby jabs. We don't want any crazy people that support Trump in our groups. And yeah, I mean, yes, in that sense, I do agree.
There's both kinds of groups here in Mexico for sure.
Roland Halleck says the hospitals don't even hire Canadians to work. And good luck if you find anybody that fully understands and speaks English and can understand your symptoms.
Yeah, but there's millions of Canadians that need jobs. Rather than train them up, we just want to bring immigrants in and then train them up.
Holden says Canada is actually in the G13. Demoted. Sean says health insurance is ridiculous. That's why in Oregon, 60% are on single payer healthcare Medicaid.
Yeah.
And again, that is an issue as well. But Tim Burns says, I'm old, but I'll be damned if a bunch of health commies are going to kill me. The main part, that's what they want. That's their future vision for you. That's how they're going to get rid of you, essentially. Sean says, guy's Californian. He's a mix of a bunch of different things. Philip Espa says, by the way, did you know Doug Ford got rid of fixed election dates in Ontario? He can go until spring of 2030. That is 5 full years.
Yeah, and they're also trying to lower the voting age to 16 at some point. It's crazy.
Let's go into
and I will say, I'm glad to be out of California. I'll tell you that. I was born in Canada, raised in Vancouver, but went back and forth between California. And man, that's another reason I'm so fervently behind freedom and independence, because I've seen both Vancouver, Canada and California, and what crazy liberal policies actually get you.
Speaking of California, let's go to Alberta and the rest of the world. Let's start with
JD Vance,
the opposite, essentially. Eric Doherty says, quote, Vice President JD Vance just ripped the left-wing globalists after the invasion of Spain, saying America is next if we don't prevent it. And that is fully true. And if you don't want to believe it, well, then you're retarded. These images out of Spain are an unfortunate reminder of the consequences of mass migration, mass invasion.
Well, and again, he's just very well spoken, and he doesn't say it the same way Trump says things. So it's not going to trigger all these moderate leftists in the same way. So in 2028, when they look at JD Vance and Marco Rubio, a lot of moderate leftists are going to vote on that side, or they're going to stay home, because what you have on the other side is potential DSA candidates that are preaching communism at this point.
Which they don't like. The normal, quote unquote, Dems don't like the DSA.
Well, and if they try to pitch JD Vance and a Marco Rubio as, oh, he's even more radical than Trump, that's ridiculous. Trump wasn't even radical. He was a Democrat for most of his life.
All over the West.
Oh, you have to turn it way up.
Okay, hold on then. It only lets me do it once it's playing, so 1 second.
All over the West. And it's kind of crazy. Is this idea that the way to generate prosperity is to bring in millions and millions of unvetted people and drop them into your neighborhoods, and we simply reject that idea. So to everybody in the UK who rejects that idea, I'd encourage them to just keep on going. It's okay to want to defend your culture. It's okay to want to live in a safe neighborhood. It's okay to want your job to go to yourself and your neighbors and not to a stranger who you don't even know. It is reasonable for the people in Western societies to want to control who comes into their country and who doesn't. A lot of people, frankly, a lot of people in the media have tried to persuade all of those people that it's somehow racist to want to protect your borders, even though very often the very people who are most affected by low-wage immigration are lower-income Black and Hispanic Americans right here in the United States of America, and I guarantee that's true in the UK. So we believe in making America great again. You can't do that unless you protect your borders. I'd encourage our friends in the UK to follow the same path. Thank you.
And he says that he's got the same policy as Trump, but he says it in a way that moderate Democrats, I believe, will vote for when they're given the choice between him and a DSA candidate like an AOC or something like that. Because he's even pitching it as we're protecting Blacks and Hispanics the most because those are the communities that are affected the most. Trump he has a different way with his words that appeals to a more fervent base, I think.
And that's what made him very popular.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm choking. Keep talking. I was going to say, it shouldn't be a radical thing, and it shouldn't be controversial to say that borders are what make a country. A culture is what makes a country.
Well, and then what are they going to...
And yet you were not allowed to say that for the longest time.
And then what are they going to do? Go call Marco Rubio a racist?
I mean, some do. I guess he's the Cuban face of white supremacy. as
Yeah,
they would
but
say.
that's going to be a good face-to-face DSA candidate versus Marco Rubio from Cuba that fled communism.
My family and I fled communism, and yet you retard that's never left America and probably never left either your university or the small town you grew up in or the very secure enclave your rich parents were able to give you. Yeah, let's debate. Let's have those two debate.
Yeah.
I'd like that. But next, speaking of insanity and communism, Eric Doherty says, quote, WDF, the Chinese Communist Party, always putting their little fingers into everything, has flown Democratic Socialists of America members to China as DSA members take a pledge to the CCP. This is betrayal. It is betrayal.
Well, and then Donald Trump calling out the DSA and communism, as well as the Chinese Communist Party for interfering in the 2020 election. That's going to make them think twice about funneling massive amounts of money to the DSA. I'm sure they're still going to do it, but I don't think they're going to overstep their bounds too far when they know Trump's watching.
I went to Beijing, kind of hung out with everybody there and checked out the communism there. And this is one of those members, and this is what they wrote. I can't wait for you to listen to this. This is D. Knight, a DSA member from New York City, reported back, Beijing buzzed with excitement. After a separate trip in 2024, Knight wrote in a blog, the provincial foreign affairs department staff called us VIPs and treated us royally. That's what he was excited about bringing back home. This is the same government that's accused of crimes against humanity, against the weaker population. And yet he's excited that he was being treated like a VIP.
Yeah, and the difference is the people who live there are not treated like VIPs.
Right.
And you used the right word in talking about this communism. Some of these DSA members are calling it Chinese socialism, which that doesn't even make sense based on the way that government operates. Of course, you're treated like a VIP. They want you to see only the best of what can happen in this society by their estimation. But the people who've lived through this, that's the important part. Just like Alexander was just talking about, people who've actually lived it and can come out and freely speak as the people of China cannot. Folks in Venezuela who will say, we starved so badly over the last few years. One human rights report says people lost an average of 24 pounds because there wasn't food to eat. And this isn't something that the DSA is hiding. They're celebrating this stuff. They're publicly signing these pledges. You know, I had Megan Romer last week on Fox News Sunday and said, do you want government ownership of private businesses?
Okay,
Yes,
and you can leave it there. And I will say it's not just the DSA, the extreme far right. There's something called MAGA communism. Most people probably never heard of it. I get into the weeds when it comes to politics. But you see this huge horseshoeing from the far left and the far right, both embracing socialism and communism. I'm not going to be surprised if they come together and put both a left and a right-wing candidate, maybe a Tucker Carlson and a Bernie Sanders, if the Democratic Party manages to push the DSA out.
You and I disagree on the Bernie point because he's 84. I don't think they'll run him. I think they might try a AOC.
But I know
Someone
more
else that's
about
retarded.
politics than you, Nat. So
I'm sure you do. I had a point on this retardation.
you
of
always have
China.
a point.
Oh, that, of course, the DSA members and the ones from the Venceremos brigade, which Karen Bass was part of when they were taking these very similar sorts of trips to Cuba and getting indoctrinated there as well back then when Che Guevara was the best thing to ever happen to Democrats. They're used as foot soldiers, and of course, when they're treated as VIPs, they think that that's what socialism and communism is, and that they will be able to reach that top echelon of being the elites and being the ones that are able to control everything. But it's those exact same foot soldiers that are put to the front of the line to either be executed or used as essential fodder once the regime actually takes place, and the ones that actually have the power are able to use it. But of course, they're shown all of this, and this is how communism gets into countries and gets into the people thinking that it's a good idea, because they always imagine themselves as the ones that will have the power over the people, when in reality, they most likely aren't.
Well, I think this was a long-term strategy, and I think it would have worked. And I think it was supposed to be transitioned under a Hillary Clinton. There were some documents that kind of leaked out. That being said, Donald Trump threw a huge monkey wrench in this thing and really set all their globalist dreams and plans ablaze, and it's on fire right now.
That's why they're so angry.
But we need to follow Donald Trump up with strong midterms and a JD Vance in 2028 if we want to burn these communist dreams to the ground.
Lastly, speaking of communist dreams, Constitution says, quote, Marco Rubio just dropped a BOMB. He stood in front of the entire world and said what almost no one has the guts to say. Should I just play it?
Yeah.
For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. We do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history. What we want is a reinvigorated alliance that recognizes that what has ailed our societies is not just a set of bad policies, but a malaise of hopelessness and complacency. An alliance is what the alliance that we want is one that is not paralyzed into inaction by fear of climate change, fear of war, fear of technology. Instead, we want an alliance that boldly races into the future. For we in America.
And I think that's a speech from a while ago from the Munich Security Conference, but again, very prescient and almost like a warning to what Europe eventually ended up doing.
Well,
and now they're having to figure out what to do with Spain.
Absolutely. And I mean, Mark Carney wants to stand up against Trump, elbows up, saying he's the worst guy in the world. What he wants you to do is take accountability for your country and make it strong again. Stand with the Western Alliance, stand with the Western Hemisphere. You're going to be part of that. There's a big strategy for the Western Hemisphere, and Mark Carney is willing to burn down the country rather than actually make it strong because he wanted control of the people. And if he makes the country strong, the people may have control of the country again.
But now we'll go back to your comments and then we'll head into RUMBLE. Sean says, made it to the store. Bye, y'all. Well, I'm glad you made it. Please make it back safe as well. And because he said he wanted to get there before they closed. It's crazy to me that... Did you want me? Yeah. It's crazy to me that... What was I saying? Oh, one thing I really don't miss about living in Vancouver is that it's essentially just a small town that thinks it's a city, a retarded small town that thinks it's a city, and everything used to close around 6:30 and 7 p.m. The bigger stores even closed very late. Like you had to plan before it got to 7 so you could go do anything almost, and that doesn't happen here in Mexico City. Tim Burns says, isn't Canada grand? Sarcasm, yes. Oh, it's grand. It thinks it's grand. That's a problem. Tim Burns says, I'm grounded well in southern Alberta. Well, hopefully soon you'll be in an independent southern Alberta. Tim Burns says, common sense for some, but most are so deranged they can't think straight. And they even don't think they are themselves straight. So there's the issues as well. Phil Vespa says, JD should ask the moderator if they think he is a radical candidate compared to Trump. The follow-up, if they say no, is then why are you framing it as a radical policy?
Yeah.
And it's so easy to expose them at this point.
Yeah.
Because of what we've seen as to how they treat even the mildest, randomest things that Trump does by acting up against it. Well, it's very easy to counteract that and to deflect that, especially in a debate.
Well, what Trump did was he was able to rally such a base, especially with the way he talks and things like that. All that's going to be handed over to J.D. Vance, and J.D. Vance is very, very eloquent, and he's very intellectual when he speaks. He is a master debater, and he's going to be able to convince a lot of liberals. You don't want to go with the communist TSA. You want to go with me.
That word always is so close to danger. Master debater. Tim Burns says Potemkin villages to fool gullible idiots. And unfortunately, because of the state of education and the educational systems in Canada, Mexico, I would even add, the US, all of Europe, it's becoming more and more palatable, and we get more and more idiots that are gullible to it. Tim Burns says DT, Donald Trump is the ultimate hand grenade. Yeah. And Dara Robinson, hello, says, hi, Nan and Guy, hello, says Edmonton police announced Bill C9 hate speech will be enforced, reported by Berta Proud Dad. Both Mayor Knack and Police Chief Rachel must be fired. Alberta still has freedom of speech.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had grabbed that story for the next episode right before we went on the air. They're going to be coming out after Alberta independence with a lot of this hate speech legislation and censorship legislation that they brought in. And it's becoming very obvious at this point. They'll do it somewhat in this binding referendum, or non-binding referendum, but leading up to that binding referendum, it's going to be an all-out assault on Alberta independence. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. We've run a way above board campaign. We've been extremely polite and just used very milquetoast talking points to literally convince people at the kitchen table,
common sense,
and in public to vote for Alberta independence.
Should I read the RUMBLE ones here or over there?
Oh, let's go over there and we'll read them over there.
Okay. So we're heading now to RUMBLE. You can find our username down here. The website is rumble.com. Apologies, I didn't know they make you sign up with your phone, apparently. I'll look into it. But we'll head over there. Otherwise, before we go, please don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube. It is what helps us out the most as well.
And if you can hit the like button, because if we can get to 100 likes on a stream, I noticed the next day it pushes it out to a much wider audience. And we're getting very close to October 19th. So we really want to try to change some hearts and minds to vote for independence.
And we'll see you, and we'll be back on Monday. But I want to end with this from Tim Burns saying, come to my door, I dare you. That's a great point on which to end. We'll see you over there. There's a 30-second wait screen, and then we'll pop up there.
Let's get ready to